morning, village.
Good morning.
Oh, what a lovely day all days would be. And half the days could be as well as this day seemed to be. I have something a little different this morning. God stepped out in space, and he looked around and said, I'm lonely. I'll make me a world. And far as the eyes of God could see, darkness covered everything. Darker than 100 midnights down in a cypress swamp. Then God smiled, and the light broke. And the darkness rolled up on one side, and the light stood shining on the other. And God said, that's good, that's good. Then God reached out and took the light in his hand, and God rolled the light around in his hand until he made the sun. And he set the sun ablazing in the heavens. And the light that was left from making the sun, God gathered up in a shining ball and flung it against the darkness, spangling the night with the moon and stars. Then down between the darkness and the light, he hurled the world. And God said, that's good. That's good. Then God himself stepped down, and the sun was on his right hand, and the moon was on his left. The stars were cluttered about his head, and the earth was under his feet. And God walked, and where he trod, his footsteps hollowed the valley out and bulged the mountain out. Then he stopped and looked and saw that the earth was hot and barren. So God stepped over to the edge of the world, and he spat out the seven seas. He batted his eyes in the lightning flash. He clapped his hands in the thunder rolled. And the water above the earth came down. The cooling water came down. Then the green grass sprouted, and the little red flowers blossomed. The pine tree pointed his finger to the sky, and the oak spread out his arms. The lake curled down in the hollow of the ground, and the river ran down to the sea. And God smiled again, and the rainbow appeared and curled itself around his shoulders. Then God raised his arm, and he waved his hand over the sea and over the land, and he said, bring forth. Bring forth. And quicker than God could drop his hand, fishes and fowls and beasts and birds swarmed the rivers and the sea, roamed the forests and the woods, and split the air with their wings. And God said, that's good, that's good. Then God walked around, and God looked around on all that he had made. He looked at his sun, and he looked at his moon, and he looked at his little stars. He looked on his world with all its living things, and God said, I'm lonely still. I'm still lonely. Then God sat down on the side of a hill where he could think. Where he could think. By a deep, wide river he sat down with his head in his hands. And God thought and thought till he thought, I'll make me a man. That's what I'll do. I'll make me a man. Up from the bed of the river, God scooped the clay, and by the banks of the river, he kneeled him down. And there the great God, yes, the great God Almighty, who lit the sun and fixed it in the sky, who flung the stars to the most far corner of the night, who round the earth in the middle of his hand, this great God, like a mammy bending over a baby, kneeled down in the dust, twirling over a lump of clay, till he shaped it in his own image. Then into it he blew the breath of life. A man became a living soul. Yes, man became a living soul.